I get a little like huffy about talking about winter solstice is the return of the sun. And I'm like, no, the winter solstice is the longest night. Focus on the night. Like the rest of the year has the light, you know? It's like the same way I feel about Christmas decorations before Halloween. Like, stop. Just give me Halloween. Hold up. Wait for a second. Just stop. Like the sun is coming back. But before the sun comes back, like, let's
sit in the cold.
Let's sit in the cold.
Let's sit in the cold and be scared. Not in a thriller type of scare. Like, oh, I'm so scared. But really, embrace that idea of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Right? And I love that.
I do too.
So welcome to episode 31.
You'll love this.
Regardless of what your practice might be, for many people, the idea of the longest night of the year is one of stillness and maybe a little bit of edginess, wondering what's going to happen in the upcoming year.
We invite you to step into our discussion as we talk about what it's like instead of rushing through the darkness to sit with it and to really focus on what it's like to be in the longest night, metaphorically as well as literally.
Stay tuned. Welcome to the Witchy Wit Podcast, where we look at life through a witchy lens. I'm Kimberlyn.
I'm Leilani.
At Witchy Wit, we explore current events,
ideas,
music and books,
and experiences in ways that recognize energy and life in everybody and everything.
We are both real witches.
And we bring two real perspectives through the lens of our different ages,
races,
and backgrounds.
With a healthy skepticism for what we have been told is true, our conversations are raw, candid, and vulnerable.
Join us as we cast a spell to uncover what we each know is true in our intuitive, witchy selves.
Before we get started, let's just see where we are in terms of our non-witchy or quasi-witchy lives.
Quasi-witchy life.
Whatever.
That feels true.
Yeah. Well, so what's going on with you?
So that actually is a really great way to put it because, so I've been trying to buy this sweater for like 3 years. And I'm not like a fashionista, like I don't really put a lot of stock into my clothes.
Though you always look fabulous.
Thank you. But fashion is just not where I direct a lot of my energy. I think it's really cool that people do. But there's this sweater that I've wanted and it's called it's the style is called a Fair Isle sweater, which I didn't realize that was a thing. But it's like what I would say is like the blueprint for an ugly Christmas sweater, but instead of like Christmas patterns, it has this interconnected series of witches on brooms, like flipped around. So it's like
and pumpkins probably.
Yes, and also pumpkins. But it's like mostly black, so I really like it. But it looks like an ugly Christmas sweater, like our traditional Christmas sweater. But if you look close enough, it's like those are witches.
I know everyone's like la 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 fa la la la
Fa la la la. So I've been watching it on this website. It's always out of stock in my size. I finally got it. I bought it like in the midsummer, and then I've been holding on to it. And then yesterday we had Ugly Christmas Sweater Day at my office, at my classroom, and I wore it. And some of my friends who, like a few of my close coworkers know, and they saw it and they were like, nah,
gotcha, yeah.
And then a couple of the people that I'm not so close to saw it and they were like, huh. And then a couple other people were like, you love Halloween. And I was like, yeah.
Oh, it's like, Tim Burton.
The Nightmare Before Christmas?
Nightmare Before Christmas, yeah. So it's like Christmas, but it's going to be Halloween.
Absolutely. I'm representing my witches all year long.
I love it. Well, congratulations. I'm glad you got the sweater.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you'll get a lot of wear out of it.
Well, I don't know, because we live in Texas, so I'm not sure how much wear I'm going to get.
Well,
but I will enjoy every opportunity I have to wear a sweater.
Well, here's the thing. Think about how you can save on energy. You can turn down your thermostat a few degrees and wear your sweater.
And wear my sweater.
And put a fire on.
That's
Because
true.
you have a fabulous fireplace.
I do love my fireplace.
So, but just turn that thermostat down. Think of the energy you're saving.
Thank you. See, so the sweater was just like a responsible purchase.
Yeah, exactly. It's helping you with climate change,
Yeah,
et cetera,
exactly.
What is it? Decreasing your carbon footprint.
There we go. And a cute sweater on top
And a cute sweater on top of it. That makes people look at you and go, huh. Well, congratulations.
Well, I'm looking at you going, huh. Mm-hmm. What are you going to check in about?
What am I going to check in about? So this year I traveled a lot. I think I mentioned back in the summer, actually before school ended. It was a big mistake on my part the way I scheduled this. But I went to Florida for the first time. I traveled for the first time in almost in a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And so I went to Florida for a little bit of time. I was finishing up my grading. I had exams come in, take-home exams, while I was in Florida. So I was grading by the pool, which is nice.
That's wonderful.
You've got to grade anyway, right?
Yeah.
And then we had a big family reunion up at Cape Cod. And so that was lovely. And now I've just been traveling. I went to visit family I went to New York City and New Jersey. And this week I'm going to Taos and I'm going to go skiing for the first time in 2 years.
Now, where is Taos?
In New Mexico. So it's a wonderful, obviously in the mountains. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe not obviously, but it is in the mountains. And it's a great, I take it you haven't been?
No. I've actually never skied.
The thing about it, I heard about Taos long before I knew about the skiing at Taos, and I've never been either. But it's a wonderful, like, little artisty town. Ooh. A lot of little galleries, and I believe there's a Georgia O'Keeffe. I think there's a Georgia O'Keeffe museum everywhere.
Nice.
But there, there's there, and maybe a studio or something of hers. I have a guidebook I need to look up some things. But I'm gonna go. I'm just gonna ski 3 days, which is plenty for these old bones. And then do the rest of the time, I'm just going to go do some sightseeing, and sightseeing, and actually grading.
Music teachers and word slip. I'm just going to do some sight singing, some sight ringing, sight reading, and sightseeing.
No one will know. And grading in between, because I have like a crap ton of things to grade. So, but I'll be grading in Taos. My place has a fireplace.
That's so wonderful.
And I think it's a gas one, so you just turn a knob, but still, And I'm planning on having hot chocolate and all that kind of stuff, so it'll be lovely.
If you're gonna grade, why not grade in Taos?
Thank you. Hot chocolate with a little bourbon. That'll make them happy.
That's just good for everyone.
Exactly, it's a win-win-win, I think. So so that's what's going on with me. You'll
love this.
Okay, it's like the best pun I can ever make. So.
We think that we're so funny, but I think we are.
Yeah, I think. No, well, I'll put it as my mother used to say: we just tickle ourselves.
We do tickle ourselves,
and it's a good thing.
Yes,
which is one of the reasons why we're doing the podcast.
That's true.
Right? Yeah,
that's true.
So let's just dive in. So I think let's start with how did we start appreciating? How did we start? What's our relationship with Yule? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Would you like to start?
Sure.
Okay.
So originally, my relationship with Christmas was pretty cultural, secular, and but I find that I really came to care a lot about Yule. I tend to call it winter solstice, and that's kind of why. Oh, you do too?
Yeah, I do too.
Oh,
yay! That's why we love each other so much.
And so I found that I really connected with Yule because of the solstice connection, and the longer I have embraced being a witch, the more I have noticed that I really plug into the changing of the seasons, as well as the darkness, getting dark earlier or later, and I think that has a lot to do with my connection towards the elements.
Right.
And the earth.
Right.
And how that's a big part of my spirituality. And I think you've shared too, you consider yourself elemental. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if you felt a tie to that as well. Totally.
So it's funny that you asked that, because even when I celebrated all of the Christian holidays, I think I got into, the Christian stuff, the calendar and Jesus and all that kind of stuff more around Easter than I did around Christmas. Christmas never, keep the Christ in Christmas and the baby Jesus and all that. I was like, okay, well, that's cute. And, you know, you drive around and see like the little baby Jesus on people's lawns and stuff. And so that, you know, I made that connection, obviously. I mean, I was a Christian, but the part that I loved about Christmas actually were the pagan things.
Really?
And initially I didn't know. I didn't know what it was. I just knew, you know, I loved decking the halls with boughs of holly, which I thought, oh, this is so wonderful. And, you know, the Christmas tree and all that kind of stuff. And I love the food and the smells. I love the smell of pine and cinnamon. And I would do this every year, take the orange and put the clove, you know, make the little, and stick cloves all in it and hang that in my closet and things like that. I loved that kind of stuff. And so, you know, I just figured that was just how I kept Christmas. I kept Christmas in my heart, you know, but I later realized, I started to realize, even while celebrating Christmas, that was not the part that jazzed me. That the parts that jazzed me had more to do with what we call the solstice and you know, moving into the dark time of the year. So one of the things that I thought really that I like caught my imagination, even if I didn't do it, was the stuff like the Yule log. And things like that, but I didn't know why. Yeah. So that was important for me, recognizing that. And what was also important for me was, you know, recognizing that when I was trying to celebrate Christmas, I was kind of not down on myself or shaming or guilting myself because I wasn't really doing it like right. But I began to just say, you know, this is how I do it. This is how
we do it. Na-na-na-na-na.
But yeah, and once I accepted that, I was just so much happier, and I could still do, you know, in many cases I would I was a church organist, so I'd do Christmas Eve service, and then I'd come back, and then I'd like slam into what I thought was my Christmas Eve ritual, which was much more a pagan ritual than just a couple of days later.
Can we just like talk for a moment about the beauty of an evergreen tree in the winter? No wonder they worshipped it. I worship it now. It is so freaking beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, just so you know, bringing it in the house is one thing. Seeing it outside is another. I love, one of my favorite things is just driving around and seeing Christmas decorations, and I love seeing trees decorated. You know, and I know I was thinking about you because my next door neighbors this year they draped their house. Last year they hung all those mirrors.
I know. I would like sit across the street and stare at your neighbor's house.
You're like mesmerized. And they didn't put those up this year. Maybe they figured this way you go home.
They're like, look, crazy lady, go home. She just sits across the street in her car staring at her mirror decorations.
Yeah, but I love that kind of thing, and to me it's that idea of the tree, you know, and the snow on it and the starlight and the whole bit.
We'll talk more about lights when we get to our EDM rave episode. I love lights.
Yes, I know you do.
And I love trees.
And I love trees too.
So lights and trees. Have you been down to the Pearl and seen the lights in the trees there?
No, not yet.
There's a spot that I love because it's next to the water, the river.
So you get your elements on.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there's lights and trees. So I've just got like all the elements going.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes. I love it.
An institution near where I work, near my institution, used to do a lot of lights. I don't know if they do it anymore, but it's really, I mean, I don't normally drive that way, but I would drive that way just to see that. Yeah. So that kind of stuff is mesmerizing to me.
Can we take a hold up for a second and wind it back and talk, because you were talking about the sun and for me, it was a huge thing when I realized this faith that speaks to me, being a witch, is like at winter solstice, we mark the return of the sun, the birth of the sun, and then being like, wait a second. Yeah. And like how, and then, so I think like among witches or neo-pagans and all that, that this concept of like the birth of the sun and then the S-U-N, and that parallel is not, you know, it's like pretty commonly known.
Right.
But I just like, I look around and I'm like, does nobody else like pick up on this? This is like really obvious. People.
Yeah. But no, you know, the propensity for the human mind to see what it wants to see is amazing, right? And you know, it's been subsumed, right? How often do you see pagans saying, "Oh, this is misappropriation. Like you're taking our stuff," right? So people don't know. How would they know, right? And so we have all of these traditions that have built up, and in many cases, I have to say, I say this every couple of years, and I feel it's time now. One of the savvy things about the Christian missionaries when they were going out to all of these pagan cultures is that they didn't try to make you give all of that stuff up. They just showed you the parallels between what they were doing and what you were doing, and then, you know, stepped back and let you, you know, run with it.
Right.
And so I think that's a big part of it too.
Yeah. Yeah. When somebody a couple days ago was talking about the keep the Christ in Christmas magnets or like car thingies, you know, and my response, they were like, keep the Christ in Christmas. They weren't saying, like, it was a friend of mine and they were like talking about, you know, like, and then people start saying keep the Christ in Christmas, and I was like, how about keep the Yule and Yule? My mouth is moving too fast.
Like, I need to think.
Think before I talk at work. Think before I talk.
I need to think.
But keep the Yule and Yule.
Thank you.
Keep the winter solstice and winter solstice. Keep the Yostre and Easter, people.
I have my magnet that you gave me.
Which, by the way, so just so everyone knows, there's a magnet that it looks like the Keep the Christ in Christmas magnet.
It looks like a manger.
It looks like a little manger, but it has like a fertility goddess with a bunny. And like the star on top, and it says "Keep the Yostre in Easter." And when I ordered it online, I ordered like, I don't remember how many, like 15. Yeah. And the guy, because it was like an Etsy seller, messaged me and was like, "Are you sure? Did you mistype? Did you mean 1 or 5?" And I was like, "No, I meant 15." And he's like, "I've never placed an order this large." And so I started to, 'cause I'm an extrovert, I started talking to him, and he was like, why are you ordering so many? And I said, well, I'm going to give them to like all the priestesses in my circle. Yeah. And he's like, there's circles in Texas. And I was like, oh, let me tell you.
Oh, son. S-O-N.
Right. Oh, son, sit down. Let's have a powwow.
Oh, how funny.
So you know, like I gave them to all the priestesses. And,
I love it. Yeah. I love it. It's in my fridge. It's my fridge. Anyway, so one of the things that I think is so important for me, and I don't do it, I didn't do it as much until I really became embedded in our circle. But even when I was, quote unquote, I'm doing quote marks in the air for people at home, Christian, I did a lot of work. I would go around and light all the candles in my house and to turn off all the lights, and so I was kind of recreating the idea of being outside in front of a bonfire. And so some of the traditions come from people just wondering, will we have enough food to last until until things start growing? And so some of the propitiation is about, sending stuff to the gods. So like, please keep us fed and all that sort of stuff. But that idea of sitting around the bonfire and being in community and celebrating the return of the sun, but always being it's kind of edgy because you're hoping, the sun's coming back, but when it's full, you're wondering how many people in that circle will still be in that circle, right? So, it's kind of an edgy celebration that it's not the same at Midsummer, right? It's totally different, right? But I loved that idea of kind of embracing that, and to be honest, it's easier to embrace that idea of being cold and hungry, etc., in New Jersey than
in South Texas.
Than in South Texas, yeah. But I would spend some time meditating. I know now, but at the time I thought I was just sitting still and thinking about this. That whole idea of the winter solstice.
I also like thinking about how in other parts of the world it's dark for the whole day or days, or because even here in San Antonio it does get dark earlier. I'm driving to school in the dark and I'm coming home normally from my work and it's getting dark, which are like modern markers of that of time for me. But like thinking about when it was like days on end and how scary that would have been to have not known is the sun coming back?
Yeah.
You know, and like we talked about like the in the other episode about the wise women. You know, like they would be like, no, it comes back for real. You know,
trust me. Here's an amulet, but it's gonna come back.
It's gonna come back, but like being like, for realsies, is it coming back?
Right. Well, for a price, my friend, I can guarantee you.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's so true. And you talk about the dark, and again, you know, it's different here in South Texas, but up north, you know, and I was reminded of this when I was visiting family for Thanksgiving. It gets dark at 4:30. I mean, it's literally by 5 o'clock it is dark, and so, you know, similarly on both ends of the day, it's much, you know, the dark comes earlier, and it stays much longer than it does here. I mean, it's a little bit more equal here. So it's real easy to kind of get that kind of huddling feeling, but I still manage now, even in South Texas, right?
And I think as witches, so for me, it's true that I like to embrace the darkness, maybe more than other circles of people do. I also think that I have noticed that witches tend to be more willing to embrace the darkness. I don't want to speak for others. I do know that it's true in our circle that we do sing dark time of the year songs all year long. And then when it gets to the dark time of the year, we're like, oh, it's dark time. We can sing them.
We have been
We've
singing
already been singing.
Yeah. But so I'd like to talk a little bit more about that for me. So one of the things that I love about our circle is that it kind of allows me to embrace a whole bunch of things that I hadn't thought about, is this idea of the fallow field. And so when you're looking out and everything's dark and cold and things aren't growing, it's not that things aren't growing. It's that, you know, on the surface where it's cold, things are just resting. But underneath, you know, there's worms and there's, you know, seeds sending out sprouts and all that sort of stuff going on. And so a part of my shadow work has been not only recognizing the places where there's shadow, but also the idea that there's this interior work that can be done even when I'm still, or even when I'm sad, or even when things are not going well. And so I've been trying to embrace that. I guess I should have been embracing it this week when I've had to do grading, but now I'm reminded, so I will. But that idea of the work that can be done even when circumstances are not optimal.
Yeah.
So that's been a big thing for me.
I think the metaphor that we often embrace in our rituals, and that I think about a lot, is between the cycles of the earth and the cycle of me, and the cycles within my life and the cycles within myself, is really powerful. And again, I think that ties into the elements and the strong pull I have towards the elements. But this idea that there's the cycles, and that the earth rests and the earth goes dormant, and that I too can rest and go dormant, and that there is that the light goes away, and that is okay, and it's okay to sit in the darkness. And I love that especially our group, we're so like pro dark time of the year. But I get a little like huffy about talking about winter solstice is the return of the sun. And I'm like, no, the winter solstice is the longest night. Focus on the night. Like the rest of the year has the light, you know? Right. It's like the same way I feel about Christmas decorations before Halloween. Like, stop. Just give me Halloween. Hold up. Wait for a second. Just stop. Like the sun is coming back, but before the sun comes back, like, let's
sit in the cold.
Let's sit in the cold.
Let's sit in the cold and be scared. Not in a thriller type of scared, like, oh, I'm so scared. But really, you know, embrace that idea of uncertainty. Yeah. Right? And I love that.
I do too.
and I love the fact that in we have a lot of diversity in terms of how people, you know, people's individual practice and even in terms of our rituals. And that's a beautiful thing. And what I love is the fact that so many of the women allow me to kind of do that and in my rituals and make space for different experiences of things like winter solstice.
And how often is it in our lives that we push through the darkness to get to the light? We push through the hard to get to the good, or we just like bear the darkness or the challenge so that we can get to the light or the goodness.
Yeah.
And instead it's like, well, what if we really dug in? What if we really learned from? What if we really
sit in it?
Let's pay attention to the work that can be done in the darkness. It's not just something to be gotten through. It is the thing to do the things with.
Yeah. Like instead of like, oh, I'm drowning, let me like, okay, sink, and sink more and sink more and sink more. Right?
I don't want to say triggered, but like. It triggered is the right word, but like just hearing you say that and you did this hand motion and you're like, and sink. And like my body was like, I'm sinking. Here we go.
We're
whoa.
Remember there was a period where we did so many trances in ritual that I think we said, like, we would say words and people would just start.
Right. Yes.
We're like meeting for coffee and
right.
people would start like trancing in the coffee in Starbucks or whatever.
If you repeat like a single word or a phrase over and over again, I just start going. I'm sinking into the darkness.
I'm sinking. Yeah, exactly. But that we can embrace that, and I'm sure a lot of people do. But the winter solstice gives us permission to just sit for a moment, like like you say, hold up, just sit, be cold, worry about your food. Give yourself permission to worry. Like in our culture in the United States, it's like, have a nice day and okay, oh, you got this, and there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes you just want to sit and be freaking depressed, right? And so you want to just sit and just say, I don't know if the light's coming back.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're gonna have enough food or whatever, and just kind of sit in that for a moment and think about it.
Yeah. Like, how often are we given space to just to grieve? Like, what isn't coming back? What light have I lost? And what darkness am I feeling?
Particularly, I mean, we're recording this at the end of 2021. We've lost so much. We've lost time. We've lost people in some cases. We've lost autonomy. We've, just like me just talking about traveling. We've lost so many things that we've taken for granted. And so this is an opportunity to just sit there and say, yeah, I know we're going to work through this and we have all of these things going on. But for this moment, just grieve. Just sit and be still in the cold.
Did you know that that's the intention for the winter solstice ritual?
No.
Yes.
No. So, for example, I was getting together for dinner with a friend, and we were talking about, we can go there, we can go that, and one of the places we mentioned, I said, you know what? I haven't been there for a while. I wonder if it's still open. There's so many things that have closed that we've lost. I mean, people have died, but institutions have died. And so that and as a culture, we say, oh, that's sad. But then we keep moving on. Like, we're told, okay, keep buying, keep doing this, keep everything going, just go. Go. I think that's a big part of it. And this is just stop. Just stop. Just stop. Because you can't do anything because it's too dark. This is, before you have like electric lights, it's too dark to do anything. There's nothing to do. You're there's nothing growing. I mean, just basically you just like watch your food and make sure that it doesn't like shrivel up while you're,
Yeah. And the idea of coming into circle and knowing that some people are not going to be there, like it's full of grief for me. And so I think that there's something to be said about, let us work in this space. Like, what if we held that space to grieve it instead of, like you said, like, you're fine, move on.
Yeah.
And really embrace that work, because the sun will come back somehow, in some way. The sun will return. But why do we always push for that instead of making use of the darkness to strengthen our magic, so that when the sun does return, we are, I don't know the words to use.
Even more powerful?
Yeah, like even more prepared, even more powerful, even more,
right.
Like whatever it is, like even more in tune with it, so that we can then move into the light, instead of rushing into the light.
Yeah, kicking it. Yeah, like, oh, we're getting there, it's over there, let's run. Yeah, just ease into it, which is, I mean, so here's the thing. The seasons are going to do that regardless, even here in South Texas. so I know our spring is usually, I think, 38 hours, but still, you know, we go from winter to a quasi-spring and then to summer, and it takes the time it takes. And that's the one thing that I don't think our culture encourages us to recognize. It takes the time it takes. Right?
Oh my gosh, let us take the time it takes. May I take the time it takes? I just, can you...
There's an intention.
Right?
Right, yeah. So, so that's something I think, you know, we'd all be better off if we could kind of think about how that might work for us, that intention might work for us. Certainly our culture would. And that's one of the things I love when our rituals encourage us to do that. And the winter solstice is perfect for that. Okay. So one of the things you had mentioned, and I wanted to kind of come back to this, you'd mentioned the idea of the elements. And and I thought about that. I just, you know, it's one of those, when I think of the elements, I usually think about myself being outside. I don't know why. But I think, I don't know why. Anyway, but I love walking. I love hiking in the winter. I love walking in the winter. I love that feeling of cold air, like kind of freezing my nostril hairs and going into my lungs. And I enjoy that. I love that I love cold air. And that's one of the reasons I like skiing. I love that, you know, that cold air. And I also like fires. As we've mentioned a number of times, I built a fire pit, and by the way, you're a really good fire maker.
Thank you. I really loved being down there, like squatting by the fire, poking it with a stick while everyone was talking.
Right. So, but anyway, but I love being outside in like a jacket, you know, when it's real super super cold with the fire going, and I never thought about. I hadn't until you mentioned it. Thought about the elements as, you know, how do the elements fit into my traditions or how I think about that. But that's something that I'm going to be a little bit more cognizant of as we approach the winter solstice this year. It's like, just how do they play for me, you know?
The leaves and the trees are a big marker for me, and they always have been. When I was in my undergrad up in Springfield, Missouri, I made it a point. I would always look for every color of the rainbow in the leaves. They were red, orange, yellow. Of course, they were green. But if I really looked, there would be blue and purple leaves.
Wow!
And that it was a process of decomposition as they were. Oh, okay. They were turning. That was shifting towards brown. But I could find some really vibrant blue and purple leaves, and so I would be walking to class. And the campus was really beautiful, and there were big trees, and they would fall, and I would always be looking, and that was the first time I really noticed it. But watching the leaves change colors and fall and release and let go and surrender, and then seeing the tree.
I love that.
Thank you. I love it too. I'm not so great at it, but
the trees can be our models, right?
I do think the trees are my model. I just want to be a tree.
Yeah.
And then watching the one of my favorite images is a barren tree. I love trees without leaves and seeing their branches, especially trees without leaves.
And the moon behind it?
Actually, you're really close. That when the light is behind the trees, so they're silhouetted, whether it be by moonlight or a sunset. But I love the black silhouette of the trees without leaves.
Me too. Yes.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite images.
I love seeing the green too, but I really love seeing. Well, I just love. So here's the thing. I think I just like watching the cycle in trees. I like watching the cycle in a lot of things, but it's really apparent in a number of different types of trees, right?
Yeah.
Yay.
And I love. So the wheel of the year is like really important to me too, and this is a side note. I get really frustrated because I like the terms like winter solstice and summer solstice and autumnal equinox, and so I like those terms fit me more than Yule. Not that there's anything wrong with Yule, but I personally think I celebrate winter solstice. But a lot of the wheels of the year have those names.
Yes.
And so I'm like, I need a wheel of the year that doesn't have those things.
Right.
And I wanted to have trees and all the 4 seasons.
Well, it's so funny because these are they're Celtic terms. These are terms that are associated with pagans from like the Welsh, Irish, so that area. It's not even you don't even see this across Europe, right? And so, but it's just that those terms were taken by the early neo-pagan groups, so the Wiccans, et cetera, and I wouldn't say we're stuck with them, but they're very much a part of the tradition, and people will say Yule, et cetera, as opposed to winter solstice, and so for me, like, all I knew was Yuletide. I thought it was just another name for Christmas, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't have that. I'm not as invested in it, I think, as some people are. Well, first of all, I have very little, very little connection with the Celtic, the Celtic wheel.
Really? Would you say?
Call me crazy, call me madcap, but it doesn't resonate for me. But I'm very similar. I love the idea of just say. I love the word equinox. I love equal night.
Right?
Gosh, so, and the balance.
Yeah, the balance. Keep talking. Keep saying.
And then solstice. And the thing about it, what I love about the idea is that it's impersonal. It has, like, so much of my world revolves around me because it's I'm that's the way we're built, right? But it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to. It's going to happen whether I pay attention to it or not, whether I celebrate it or not. It's just going to happen. And so, in a way, it's kind of it's like that idea of hitching yourself to a star. I can't remember, but connecting to something so much bigger than me, and for a moment. Well, not for a moment, I do it a lot, but, that idea that I can embrace this kind of impersonal thing that's just rolling, rolling. And for a moment, I can hang on to it and be a part of it.
Yes. I just had a side thought of, like, I wonder if maybe that's how some people experience the Christian God.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they're hitching themselves to this thing that's going.
Of course.
But that is how I feel with the Wheel of the Year, and why it's so important to me. It's rolling, and it's going, and I get to witness the changes, whether it be with the leaves, which is why I like to open my doors and let the leaves blow in. And then I have leaves on my floor, and my partner is like, should we sweep this? And I'm like, leave the leaves. Leave the leaves. Leave the leaves. Leave them alone. I want them on my floor, And so then I close my door and there's, like, leaves all over my floor. That's what I want. And then I light a fire. I got all these elements going.
Yeah.
But one of the things that you said really brought up something for me, and that's that in the images that I saw of what it meant to be a witch, were these names of things that really didn't resonate with me. I'm not. I don't know if I have ancestry over there or not. But, like, I'm not Celtic, and that's not my practice. It never has been. But the images that, like, Yule is, there's snow on the ground. Well, I live in San Antonio. There is no snow unless you went to Snowvid, but that was in February. And that's because global warming.
I was going to say, yeah, and it only happens like every 90 years or something.
Right. But I felt like my experience had to be this certain way. And then unshackling myself from that, and then honoring the earth as it manifests where
we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I wish that I had known that and embraced that a long time ago, whenever I was trying to figure out this witchiness, and to be told that it can look like it looks in me, but also it can look like it looks in the earth, and it doesn't have to look like it does in the books, where there's snow on the ground for Yule.
Snow with a snowman.
Right. Like, that's not happening. That's not happening down here. I still have leaves on my tree, although they are changing,
which
is really wonderful. But I still have leaves on my tree outside. So, and sometimes I've gone over to my family's house for Christmas in a short sleeve shirt down here, right?
Yeah. And so a part of that, letting it be what it is recognizing that it's going to be different. It's going to be, well, no, it's not going to be different. It's going to be the way it's supposed to be in San Antonio. And that's what it's going to look like, and accepting that. And that's, again, that idea of acceptance and understanding makes it so much easier to, quote unquote, celebrate. Right?
I would love to see my message to myself, and I wonder how it'll land for people who are listening, just as we've talked about, showing up to be a witch is about looking at what it is that you hold, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do I
Right.
have? What is, how does the sacred speak to me, for me? How does it move through me?
Mm-hmm.
How does it manifest in my life, in my body, in my words, you know, in whatever it is, how I bring my magic, but also like my experience with understanding winter solstice or Yule is like, how does it manifest in the earth?
Mm-hmm.
How does it manifest around me? Not how is it supposed to look?
Right.
Not how am I told it's supposed to be, but how can I honor it in the way that it is here where I am?
That is such a great point. So it takes me to something that, so I mentioned earlier that I was doing a lot of kind of neo-pagan type of things, not recognizing that was the case, right? And I think the hard thing for me was making that fit Christmas, trying to do that with my family, you know, trying to keep whatever I was doing kind of inviolate, because it was different from what they were doing, and I didn't want a lot of bleed over. And it was only when I accepted that it's winter solstice and recognized that it made it so much easier, because then it became less, to me, Christmas is about family and friends and people. Winter solstice is about the world, about the earth, and nature, and I'm a part of it, but it's not me trying to make community or trying to make everybody feel something. It's just me kind of feeling what it feels like to be that. And there's no roadmap. There's no specific way that I'm supposed to feel. And so for me, accepting that, and I've only really recently done that in the past few years for myself in my personal practices, recognizing kind of the impersonal quality of it, and embracing that.
Mm-hmm. I think the impersonal quality of it is what makes it so personal to me. I know it's like sounds paradoxical,
well, you're embracing
you know,
it.
but like really tapping into that impersonal. The wheel is turning. It is dark, whether I like notice it or not, whether I'm here or not. Like, it is going to be the longest night, and that is what is so deeply personal to me, is holding on to that.
Yeah, making kind of being a part of it, and thus it becomes a part of you.
I have always
a part of me. Sorry, I referencing.
I've always wanted to go and be in one of the places where it is dark for.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Except I get seasonal affective disorder.
You do?
Yes, I do. I haven't. I'm in San Antonio now, but that's when I started skiing. I didn't tell you the story.
There's so much reflection of light from the snow.
Yes. I used to get. I remember telling. I was teaching back in New Jersey, and I remember telling a woman about how depressed I got, and I was trying to find like light bulbs, you know, the special light bulbs. And she said, "Oh, why don't you come skiing with us? Because first of all, you're above the cloud layer, right? And the sun's bouncing off of all of that snow." My God, I was giddy.
Oh my gosh,
I was giddy when I first started skiing, because it was such a dramatic change for me.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So why are we talking about this?
I don't know, but I really like the darkness. Like, when it's a cloudy, rainy day, I'm like, woohoo! I'm like all perked up. I think I would do well in Seattle or Portland.
Oh my gosh.
I would do well in the Pacific Northwest.
Like Alaska or someplace like that?
Someplace. Like,
Wow.
Yeah. When we were there for our priestessing apprenticeship.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it would be like cold and rainy and
dark.
dark.
And we'd be walking there in the dark. Yes,
and I was like, yes. Darkness.
Yeah. So for me, that's one of those things where I'm going to embrace that feeling, and not it doesn't energize me.
LED lights and like raves and festivals. All the lights are better in the darkness.
Well, yeah. I like that idea.
I do too.
And you can get mesmerized. So, instead of doing a poem, we're going to do a song that I have loved for years, and I think it's perfect for what we've been talking about. It's a song by a group. I don't know if they're still recording now, but they recorded it extensively in the 90s.
The late, I would say the 90s and the early zeros.
In the early zeros. And that's Emerald Rose. And the song is Santa Claus is Pagan Too.
And Emerald Rose makes a song called Freya Shakti.
Oh, right. Yes.
And that was one of the first songs that I heard, and I melted down. Like, it struck something in me. So this group has this group has ties to me in that they really helped me realize who I was.
Yeah, there's a couple of other songs too of theirs that I've really liked over the years. So,
but this one is a fun one.
Well, hopefully it'll be fun for you. So, we'll be singing this, and the whole song will be on our Patreon site for the Patreon listeners, the brave and bold,
the bold who venture onto Patreon to hear our witchy reaction, our unfiltered reactions to the topics of the episodes and other things.
Yes, exactly. Okay, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Santa Claus is pagan too, just like all the rest. And if you are a merry witch, he'll bring you all the best. So get that star up on the roof and bake those cookies too. 'Cause Christmas time is really Yule, and Santa's pagan too. He's got that Buddha belly, and his pop's the Holly King. You've dressed him up in British coat, now the cap's a Nordic thing.
You took the horns right off his head and stuck them on his deer, but he still flies high like Jupiter with a belly full of beer.
Hey, Santa Claus is pagan too, just like all the rest. And if you are a merry witch, he'll bring you all the best. So get that star up on the roof and bake those cookies too. 'Cause Christmas time is really Yule, and Santa's pagan too. We hope you have enjoyed the magic that has unfolded here at Witchy Wit.
It would be great if you would help make Witchy Wit possible and get access to exclusive content by donating on Patreon.
We'd love it if you join our witchy community and enjoy shareable content on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube.
Would you do us a big favor and support us by rating and reviewing us wherever you get your podcasts? It's free and helps witchy folks find us.
Feel free to email us at witchywitpodcast@gmail.com. We love to hear from our community. Reach out and let us know what's brewing in your cauldron.
New episodes are released every second and fourth Friday. Follow us on your favorite podcasting platform so our episodes go right to your playlist. You can listen as you ride your broom.
Stay witchy, y'all!